After 5 years of paying their mortgage, my parents gave their home as a wedding gift to my sister. 2 months later, they wanted my vacation house. I refused. Then, the police called me. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as Mark and I pulled our car to a stop outside the elegant venue. Today was the day my younger sister, Lily, would walk down the aisle. Nestled securely in Mark's inner jacket pocket was our wedding gift, a substantial check for $10,000. This was in addition to the significant portion, roughly a third, of the wedding expenses we'd already covered. It was a considerable sum, but between Mark's demanding role in investment banking and my own as a marketing director, we were fortunate enough to manage it. Besides, Lily was my only sibling. As we stepped inside, my gaze immediately found my parents. Mother was meticulously adjusting father's tie, a familiar ritual he feigned annoyance at, though a telltale smile danced on his lips. They radiated an almost ethereal happiness, their faces alight with unbridled joy. Mother's complexion seemed to glow, and father appeared years younger. A knot tightened in my stomach. I couldn't recall them looking quite so jubilant at my own wedding 5 years prior. They had been pleasant, certainly, but not brimming with this palpable pride and delight. I swiftly dismissed the unsettling thought. This was not the moment to dredge up old sentiments. The ceremony unfolded flawlessly. Lily was breathtaking in her gown, and her fiancé, now husband, Jake, couldn't tear his eyes away from her. Seated between my parents and Mark, I struggled to immerse myself in the day's celebration, battling the persistent whisper that my parents' exuberance felt distinctly different from what I remembered of my own nuptials. The reception followed, a blur of feasting, toasts, and dancing. Then came the speeches. The best man spoke, followed by the maid of honor, and finally, my parents rose together. Mother gently tapped her glass. "We want to thank everyone for joining us today to celebrate our beloved daughter's wedding." The emphasis on beloved made me shift uneasily. Mark, sensing my discomfort, subtly covered my hand with his. Father continued, "Watching Lily blossom into the remarkable woman she is today has been the profoundest joy of our lives. She has always been exceptional, always illuminated our home with her presence." I offered a polite smile and nod, wondering if my sensitivity was getting the better of me. Of course, they adored Lily, they loved us both. Then Mother reached into her purse, extracting a stack of papers. "Jake, Lily, your father and I wish to bestow upon you something truly special to commence your new life together." She held up the documents for all to see. "We are gifting you our family home as a wedding present." A collective gasp swept through the room, swiftly followed by a thunderous ovation. I froze. Beside me, Mark stiffened. My eyes darted from my parents to Lily, half expecting someone to burst out laughing, declaring it all a grand jest. But it wasn't. My parents beamed with pride, and Lily showed no surprise whatsoever. Tears of happiness streamed down her face as she embraced Jake, whose jaw hung slack, staring at my parents in disbelief. The house. My childhood home. The very house whose mortgage I had been diligently paying for the past 5 years because my parents, after father's reduced work hours and mother's debilitating arthritis, could no longer afford it. I managed to fix a smile on my face, but internally, a silent scream tore through me. Not once had they breathed a word of this plan. They hadn't even consulted me, the one footing the bill. "Tessa, are you all right?" Mark whispered. "Fine," I gritted out, maintaining my fixed smile as Lily and Jake moved forward to embrace my parents amidst the continued applause. An hour later, the charade became unbearable. I found Mark near the bar. Can we leave?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He took one look at my strained expression and nodded. "I'll fetch our coats." We offered our hurried apologies. Mark had an early meeting, such a beautiful wedding, congratulations again, and slipped away before anyone could press us further. The moment the car doors clicked shut, my composure shattered. "I can't believe they did that," I sobbed as Mark started the engine. "I've been paying that mortgage for 5 years, and they didn't even tell me they were planning this." "I know," Mark said, his voice grim. "It's truly astonishing. And Lily knew, didn't she? Her face, she wasn't surprised at all. I angrily wiped away my tears. This isn't about the money. I honestly don't care about the money. But they could have talked to me first. As we drove home, a flood of memories assaulted me, each one a fresh sting of my parents' blatant favoritism towards Lily. Remember when I graduated college and they gave me a $50 card, but when Lily graduated 2 years later they bought her a car? That wasn't right, Mark agreed. Or my 21st birthday dinner they skipped because Lily had a volleyball game? A game, Mark! Not even a championship or anything important. The more I spoke, the more examples surfaced. Each instance, Lily received what she desired, while I was overlooked or simply forgotten. How they attended all of Lily's events but concocted excuses to miss mine. How they lauded Lily's achievements, but barely acknowledged my own. By the time we reached our apartment, I was emotionally spent from crying and recounting. Where are your parents going to live now? Mark asked as we prepared for bed. If they're giving the house to Lily and Jake? I shrugged, pulling on my pajamas. I have no idea. That's not my concern anymore. I switched off the light and rolled over, attempting to quell the persistent ache in my chest. For the next 3 weeks, I immersed myself in routine, work, home, and a deliberate avoidance of any thoughts related to the wedding, the house, or the unsettling events. Then, one evening, my phone chimed. It was my mother. Against my better judgment, I answered. Tessa, honey, she said, her voice unnervingly casual. We're having a family dinner this weekend. Your sister and Jake are back from their honeymoon, and we'd love for you and Mark to join us. I yearned to refuse, to hang up, but a foolish, hopeful part of me wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, an apology or an explanation awaited. Fine, I said flatly. We'll be there Saturday. Saturday arrived too swiftly. As we pulled into the driveway, Lily's car was already there, alongside my parents' familiar sedan. We approached the front door, and I hesitated before ringing the bell. It felt peculiar not using my key, but this was no longer my parents' house. It was Lily and Jake's. Mother answered, her face wreathed in smiles. Tessa, Mark, come in, come in. She embraced me as if nothing untoward had transpired, as if she hadn't given away the house I'd been paying for without a single word. I returned her hug stiffly. Father was in the living room with Jake, engrossed in a game. He rose as we entered, offering Mark a firm handshake and me a quick hug. Where's Lily? I asked, noting her absence. Oh, she's changing the curtains in the dining room, Mother said casually. She's been redecorating all week. My blood simmered. 3 weeks. It had been a mere 3 weeks since the wedding, and Lily was already altering things, acting as if she'd been the homeowner for years. We walked through to the dining room, where my sister stood on a stepladder, meticulously hanging new cream-colored curtains, replacing Mother's old blue ones. Dinner's ready, Mother announced. Everyone, please sit down. We took our places. I was seated between Mark and Father, with Mother and Lily across from us, and Jake at the head of the table. The food looked appetizing, Mother's signature pot roast with all the trimmings, but I had no appetite. The initial 10 minutes were consumed by Lily and Jake's exhaustive recounting of their Hawaiian honeymoon. I mechanically ate my food, nodding occasionally, while Mark skillfully posed questions to keep the conversation flowing. Finally, when Lily paused for breath, Mother cleared her throat. So, Tessa, we wanted to discuss something with you, she began. Well, as you know, we've given the house to Lily and Jake as their wedding present. Yes, I notice, I stated flatly. Mother continued as if my sharp tone hadn't registered. The thing is, they're a young couple, just starting their life together. They need their own space. I remained silent, waiting for her to reach the crux of the matter. Father shifted uncomfortably. What your mother is trying to convey, he interjected, is that we can't reside here with them. They require privacy. I see, I said, still unsure of their ultimate destination. So, where are you planning to live? Mother and Father exchanged another meaningful glance. Lily, I noticed, suddenly became intensely absorbed in her mashed potatoes. Well, Mother said slowly, we've been contemplating it, and we've decided we're going to relocate to your vacation home. It's the ideal size for us, and it's in such a pleasant, tranquil area. I carefully placed my fork and knife down. The vacation home they referenced was a modest cottage I had purchased with my own savings before I even met Mark. I had toiled for years, working overtime and weekends to afford it. It was my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the city, and occasionally, I permitted my parents to use it for a weekend getaway. Let me be clear, I said, keeping my voice unnervingly level. You gave away your house, the house I've been paying the mortgage on for 5 years, to Lily, and now you presume you're going to move into my vacation home without even bothering to ask me first? Tessa, Father frowned. Be reasonable. Where else are we supposed to go? That is not my problem, I retorted. You had a house. You gave it away without consulting me, despite the fact that I've been paying for it. And now you expect me to simply hand over my private property to you? It's not like you use it that much, Lily interjected, her voice laced with accusation. I turned to her, my anger no longer containable. Are you serious right now? It's my property. I bought it with my money. I get to decide who uses it and when. Mother's face had paled. You can't mean, you're not saying no, are you? She stammered. That's precisely what I'm saying, I replied. No. You are not moving into my vacation home. Not now. Not ever. The table fell into a stunned silence. Then, Mother's face crumpled. How can you do this to us? She cried. After everything we've sacrificed for you? We're your parents. Yes, and as my parents, you might have considered discussing this with me before giving away a house I was financially supporting, and then unilaterally deciding to appropriate my property. You don't have the right to refuse us. Mother's voice rose. We have nowhere else to go now. You actually have your house, I pointed out. The one I've been paying the mortgage on for 5 years. But you gave it to Lily. So now, it's your responsibility to figure out your living arrangements. Lily slammed her hand on the table. God, you're so cruel and selfish. You've always been envious of me because Mom and Dad favor me more. You've always resented our bond. I stared at her, momentarily stunned by her outburst. Then, a sudden calm settled over me. If Mom and Dad love you so much, and you love them so much, then why don't you let them live here with you? This is a 4-bedroom house, plenty of room. Lily's mouth snapped shut. She averted her gaze, suddenly finding her plate of mashed potatoes utterly fascinating. That's not the point, she mumbled. Jake and I need our privacy, she added. And I need my vacation home, I countered. Sounds like we both have needs. My parents began speaking over each other, a cacophony of accusations. How wrong I was, how disappointing, how selfish. I stopped listening. I stood up, retrieved my purse. Mark, I think we're done here. The next day, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages and calls from my parents and Lily. I ignored them all. Some labeled me heartless, others pleaded with me to reconsider, while still others attempted to guilt-trip me with reminders of their supposed sacrifices over the years. I showed a few of the messages to Mark, who shook his head in disbelief. I think I need to block them for a while, I said. I can't keep reading these. Do what you need to do, Mark said, kissing the top of my head. Prioritize your well-being. So I did. I blocked their numbers and social media accounts, at least temporarily. I needed space to think, to process the overwhelming events. 2 weeks passed in blissful silence. No calls, no texts, no family drama. Mark and I settled back into our comfortable routine: work, home, occasional dinners with friends who didn't attempt to claim my property. It was peaceful. I was at my desk, reviewing a marketing campaign, when my phone buzzed with an alert. My stomach plummeted. It was a notification from the security system at my vacation home. Motion detected. Front door opened. I quickly checked the app. Someone had used a key to unlock the front door but had failed to disarm the alarm system. The security company would be calling any second to verify authorized entry. Sure enough, my phone rang almost immediately. "Miss Wilson, this is Safeguard Security. We've detected entry at your property on Pine Ridge Road. Is this authorized?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm not there, and no one has permission to be there. Please dispatch the police immediately." An hour later, my phone rang again. It was an officer from the local police department. "Miss Wilson, this is Officer Rhea. We're at your property on Pine Ridge Road. We have 2 individuals here who claim to be your parents. They possess keys to the property but admit they do not have permission to be there." I closed my eyes, my suspicions confirmed. "Yes, those are my parents, but they absolutely do not have permission to be in my house." "I understand," the officer responded. "How would you like us to proceed?" "We can remove them from the property, but since they used a key rather than forced entry, it's a somewhat ambiguous area for charges." "I'll come up there," I decided. "My husband and I can drive up now. We're about an hour away." The drive was fraught with tension. I oscillated between simmering anger and utter disbelief. How could they do this? After I had explicitly forbidden it, they still tried to move in. Who does that? When we pulled up to my vacation home, a police cruiser was parked in the driveway. 2 officers stood outside, while my parents sat dejectedly on the front porch steps, their suitcases and boxes piled beside them. My father rose when he saw us. "Tessa, thank goodness you're here. Tell these officers there's been a misunderstanding." I exited the car and approached the officers, momentarily ignoring my parents. "Thank you for responding so quickly. These are indeed my parents, but they do not have permission to be here." One of the officers nodded. "Ma'am, do you wish to press charges for trespassing?" My mother gasped. "Tessa, you wouldn't." I turned to her. "You gained unauthorized entry into my house after I specifically told you no. What did you expect to happen?" "We didn't break in," my father protested. "We used the key you gave us." "This is all your fault," my mother suddenly shrieked, standing up. "If you had simply allowed us to stay here as we planned, none of this would have occurred. We wouldn't be standing here, treated like criminals." I stared at her, stunned by the sheer audacity of her outburst. "My fault? You gave away a house I was paying the mortgage on without consulting me, then attempted to seize my property without permission, and somehow this is my fault? You're so arrogant," Mother continued, completely disregarding my point. "So irresponsible. We raised you better than this. We gave you everything." "Mom, stop," I said, my voice low and firm. "You're humiliating yourself. You and Dad just tried to force your way into my house to live there after I explicitly told you no, and now you're standing here in front of police officers, lecturing me about my irresponsibility." That seemed to penetrate her indignation. She abruptly clamped her mouth shut, though her eyes still blazed. I turned back to the officers. "I'd like a word in private, please." We stepped away from my parents and Mark. "I don't want to press charges against them," I said quietly. "They're still my parents, even if they're behaving utterly absurdly right now. But I cannot have them staying here either." The officer nodded. "We understand. Family situations can be complex. We can transport them to the station for a few hours, issue a stern warning about trespassing, and then release them. Sometimes, a few hours in a holding cell can offer a valuable perspective." I considered this. That might be the jolt they needed. "Yes, please do that." I walked back to where my parents sat. "The officers are going to take you to the police station for a few hours. I'm not pressing charges, but I want you to grasp the gravity of this. You cannot simply move into someone's house without permission, even if you're family." The police car, carrying my parents, departed while we awaited the locksmith. I arranged for my parents' belongings to be transported to a nearby storage facility, paying for 1 month and texting the details to my sister, as my parents' numbers remained blocked. The locksmith arrived and changed all the locks. By the time we left, the house was secure once more. On the drive home, I felt utterly drained, yet strangely unburdened. For the first time in my adult life, I had confronted my parents' manipulation and refused to be exploited. "What do you think they'll do now?" Mark asked as we neared our apartment. "Probably run crying to Lily," I guessed. "She can deal with them. She got the house. She can shoulder the responsibility that comes with it." I wasn't naive enough to believe this saga was truly over. Knowing my mother, she would undoubtedly find a way to cast me as the antagonist. She always did. I was right. A week later, I opened Facebook to a lengthy, dramatic post from my mother. It had already garnered dozens of sympathetic comments from relatives and family friends. "Today, I learned what it truly means to be abandoned by your own child," it began. "My husband and I, in our golden years, have been cast out like unwanted pets. Our eldest daughter, Tessa, had the police remove us from her vacation home like common criminals, leaving us with nowhere to go." The post continued, conveniently omitting the fact that they had given their house to Lily, that I had been paying their mortgage for years, and that they had attempted to move into my vacation home against my explicit refusal. As I scrolled through the comments, people branding me heartless, cruel, ungrateful, something inside me snapped. I began typing my own post in response. It was time for everyone to hear the complete truth. I've remained silent about family matters until now, but since my mother has chosen to make our private issues public, I feel compelled to share my side of the story. Here are the facts that were conveniently left out of my mother's posts. For the past 5 years, I have been diligently paying the mortgage on my parents' house because they could no longer afford it due to health issues and reduced work hours. I did this willingly because they are my family, and they needed assistance. 3 weeks ago, at my sister Lily's wedding, which I also helped finance, my parents announced they were gifting their house, the one I've been paying for, to my sister as a wedding present. They did this without consulting me or even giving me prior notice. When I finally spoke to them after the wedding, they informed me that they had planned to move into my vacation home, again, without asking me first. They had apparently orchestrated this entire arrangement with my sister before her wedding. She would receive their house, and they would occupy my vacation property. When I refused to allow them to move into my vacation home, they attempted to move in any way. They used a spare key I had given them for emergencies, which triggered the security system. That is why the police became involved. I did not have them arrested, despite what my mother's post suggests. I did have the police remove them from my property because they were trespassing. I then paid for a storage unit for their belongings. If my parents require a place to stay, perhaps they should inquire with my sister, who now owns a 4-bedroom house thanks to them, and me, since I paid for it. I added a final paragraph. I have always strived to assist my family, but I will not be taken advantage of or vilified for refusing to relinquish my property after already covering theirs. Family is a reciprocal bond. It's about mutual respect, not merely taking whatever you desire because we're family. I hit post before I could second-guess myself. Mark read it over my shoulder and gave me a thumbs up. The response was immediate. Comments flooded in from cousins, aunts, uncles, even some of my parents' friends. But unlike the comments on my mother's posts, these were supportive. "I had no idea you were paying their mortgage. That's so unfair of them. Wait, they gave away a house you were paying for?" I should have felt vindicated, but mostly, I just felt weary. This entire situation was draining, and airing it publicly didn't exactly feel good, even if I was merely defending myself. 2 days later, my cousin Jessica called me. "Hey, I wanted to check on you," she said. "Your parents tried to go back to their house, I mean, Lily's house now, but she wouldn't let them in." I sat up straighter. "Seriously?" "Yeah, apparently she told them it's her house now and there's no room for them. They're staying in some crappy apartment now, and your mom had to go back to working full-time to afford the rent." I didn't know how to feel about that. Part of me thought they deserved it. This was the consequence of their own actions. But another part still felt a pang of sympathy. They were still my parents, despite their unfair treatment. After we hung up, I told Mark what Jessica had said. "It's just karma," he remarked. "Yeah," I agreed, "but I don't feel as satisfied as I thought I would." "That's because you're a good person, Tessa," he said, pulling me close. "Unlike some people we could mention." Over the next few weeks, my parents attempted to contact me several times. I saw their names on my phone but couldn't bring myself to answer. I wasn't ready. The hurt was still too raw. One night, as Mark and I were preparing for bed, he asked me, "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" I considered it. "Maybe someday. Not for their sake, but for mine. Carrying around all this anger isn't healthy." "And Lily?" I sighed. "That's more complicated. She knew what they were planning. She was part of it. And then she turned them away when they needed her." "At least you know where you stand now," Mark said. "No more illusions about who's important to them and who isn't." He was right. As painful as this whole experience had been, it had stripped away the pretense. I'd spent years trying to earn my parents' approval, trying to be as cherished as Lily was to them. Now, I knew that was never going to happen. And strangely, that realization was liberating. The next morning, I saw another call from my mother. This time, I let it go to voicemail. "Tessa." Her voice was different now, smaller, less demanding. We made a mistake. A big one. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But please call us back. We need to talk." I deleted the message without calling back. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear their apology, if that's what they were truly offering. Maybe someday I'd be ready to have them back in my life, on new terms, with clear boundaries. But not today. Today, I was still learning how to prioritize myself, something I should have done a long time ago. As for my vacation home, I decided to list it for rent. The extra income would be beneficial, and I liked the idea of the place being used and enjoyed, rather than sitting empty as a constant reminder of everything that had transpired.